What's going on, everyone? Austin John Plays here, and today we're going to be talking about Pokemon Champions and how it literally might be changing Pokemon forever. Pokemon Day 2025 just happened, and they had the Pokemon Presents that showed us Pokemon Champions, which is going to be a cross-platform game/app in which you're going to be able to battle Pokemon. Sounds very simple, core concept, but now it's tied to the whole base idea of Pokemon. Not a third-party company, not a spin-off, not Pokemon Unite. This is the core Pokemon game. In the trailer, they showed doubles battles. Two Pokemon going against two Pokemon, which is the official format of the competitive scene. And I think they did that for a very good reason. Pokemon Champions may very well be the groundwork for all of Pokemon changing in the future, while not excluding any part of the player base. It's a genius move, and we're just now starting to see the tip of the iceberg. When talking about moving the core video game battling experience away from titles and toward its own separate thing, there's a lot of things to consider, both as a casual player and as a competitive player. While I'm not a professional competitive player, I do keep up with the scene. I'm familiar with how things work, run, and operate. I want to address this for both angles here. If you remove the competitive battling from Pokemon games, the games themselves can be different and better. The VGC format of doubles battles, 4 moves, 1 ability slot, 1 held item is going to remain that for the foreseeable future. But if you take that out of the Pokemon games, you can then have experiences that are vastly different. If you've ever played the Final Fantasy series, you might remember the fact that for the first 10 games, it was the traditional turnstile RPG, choose 4 different moves, do attacks, so on and so forth like that. And then it started changing and evolving. Once they broke away from the base system of how the battles are done, they were able to implement many different things between different battle styles, automating your moves via gambits in 12, to full-on action scenes like they did in 16. Pokemon Legends Arceus introduced the agile style and the strong style for all of your different attacks that would not work in the competitive scene. And now with Pokemon Legends ZA, we're now seeing a live action battle scene. That obviously would not work for the competitive scene. With all of that taken away, the games are now free to explore those different avenues, those different gameplay styles, and alleviate one of the major criticisms that Pokemon has had for the last 29 years is that it's the same game. It's the same exact formula. Well, now they're breaking away from that. This is the first step in what may be a very bold strategy going forward. There's so many things that have to be included and brought up every single time that a Pokemon game comes around. It has to have all the code to be compatible with tournaments, but with all of that stripped away, that leaves significantly more time for the developers to focus on other angles and different ways that they want to tell their story. It also alleviates one of the issues of the in-between generation Pokemon. When we had Legends Arceus come out, we had a handful of new Pokemon that were not able to be used in the competitive format for, I think, a year and a half. It was after Pokemon Legends Arceus came out, and then after Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and then after Pokemon Bank updated. It was summer of 2023, and they decided that the season that was going to be for the World Championship was also going to include all of the Pokemon Home Pokemon. You weren't able to use these Pokemon for the entire time that they existed, for over a year. But now, if you're just going to be able to take these Pokemon, put them in Pokemon Home, as soon as they're in Home and Champions is updated, now you're going to be able to battle with them and see how the game constantly evolves and changes while still keeping old Pokemon and introducing new ones. This also means that when the developers of the core Pokemon games are making their games, they no longer have to take into consideration how these Pokemon are going to be balancing against each other within the game. Because before Pokemon Home comes out, a lot of the formats, in even more recently, even after Pokemon's out, some of the formats only allowed the base game Pokemon. So now they're able to tell a much more narrative story that doesn't have to focus on these specific angles as much. Let's talk about the gosh dang Pokemons that we saw, because we saw Mega Charizard go up against a terastallized Dondozo, and that is so big. It's so, well, no, it's not that big. The stadium is big. And you know what that means, right? Gigantamax. I firmly believe that now that all of these Pokemon exist within the vacuum that is Champions and it works with Pokemon Home, you're going to be able to have little toggles for different seasons competitively and for different formats to allow Megas, Terastallization, Dynamax and Gigantamax Pokemon, Z Crystals. All of these things can be returning and balancing, turned on and off between the different seasons for a very varied level of gameplay experience, both from a casual angle and a competitive angle. It's going to bring so much life into the competitive scene, while all of the casual players are going to be able to enjoy their Pokemon having these different experiences. All of this raises the biggest question, which is the rental Pokemon. You talk about you're going to be able to bring over your own Pokemon, and they make it sound very optional. So my question is, what of the rental Pokemon there? Is it going to be like the classic stadium games where you just have certain rental Pokemon? Or is there going to be more of a simulator, kind of like Pokemon Showdown, where you can specifically choose how much stats you want of one Pokemon, what abilities, what moves, bring them into battle and see how they're going to match up? And honestly, I could see it going either way. If you take the Mightiest Mark Charizard that you caught in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you can then take that Mightiest Mark Charizard, bring him into Pokemon Sword and Shield, give him G-Max Soup, so now he's G-Max Charizard, bring his Dynamax level up to 10 with the Dynamax item, I forgot what it was. So now you have Dynamax level 10, G-Max Charizard with the Mightiest Mark, who is a Terra Dragon. And since items are not compatible in Home, we could also just assume that the game is going to provide you those items. So the Charizardite X and Y, you're going to be able to just get those in the game. Or, you know, Z Crystal or whatever else you want to do. Because of this Pokemon Home update that we had a while ago that allows this cross-game play, everything that we need already exists. Now, Pokemon Champions is not going to support all 1025 Pokemon at time of launch. It is not. They're going to have a certain amount of Pokemon when the game comes out, and then they're going to be updating it in the future. That just makes sense. Probably going to be supporting the most recent Pokemon that are going to be in there, plus the Pokemon that they want for a competitive scene first, which also raises how they're going to do that transitional year. Worlds 25 and 26 taking place both in California. I firmly believe we're not going to be seeing Pokemon Champions for the 2025 World Championship, but for 2026 we may. I don't want this to be a long video. I don't want this to be a long stretched out discussion. I want this to be just making you realize things that are happening, that can be happening in the background for the years to come based on what we just saw. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. Everything that I'm saying is extremely grounded, that has roots of already existing or is very easy, and it seems like the main clear choice that they're going to be doing going forward. Pokemon Champions and vis-a-vis removing competitive Pokemon from the base Pokemon games is the best thing to happen to Pokemon since competitive Pokemon. All the competitive players are still going to be able to do their battles with Pokemon Champions. We're going to be able to have a fresh new experience with different battle styles throughout different games going forward. Future new generations don't have to be the home of a new battle generation. In fact, we're probably learning about it now because the Generation 10 games on the Nintendo Switch 2 are not going to be where the tournaments are held. They're going to be held in Champions. And the battle style may not be the typical turn-based that we've seen. There's a lot of things on the table, a lot of possibilities. And I'm excited to see what's going to be happening going forward. And I hope you are as well. I want to know your thoughts on this discussion, on this talking piece. Leave them down below. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, Austin John out.
Man, they see me shining like I got the charm. Stay strapped, got that jet ball in my palm. Felt from the sky, guess I'm the chosen one. And if you need to know how, check out Austin John. Champion flow, flow, yeah. I got that champion flow, flow.